Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome international broadcast journalist Nick Gowing.
Good morning. You haven't come to listen to me. Let me invite the President of Saudi Aramco, Mr. AlFalih, onto the stage to join me. We've got plenty to do in the next half hour, and I'd like to remind you what I said to you yesterday, that you can pose questions as well. And Bob, if we can put up that address to remind people how they can communicate in the next half hour to put questions. Good morning. Put questions to the President of Saudi Aramco. It is ask@gcf.org.sa, or you can tweet at GEF Talk. I'd like you to feel that you've got access to the President of Saudi Aramco. Welcome. We're here to talk about transforming the economy in Saudi Aramco, its role, its future vision, including the role in transforming the national economy, Mr. AlFalih. And that means I can't ignore what's happening in the oil business at the moment. And one of the senior officials here up on the platform said, we expect the government to keep spending because of its big surpluses, despite the fact that the oil price is so low. What has happened to the oil market? Is it going in the direction that you wanted?
Well, I'm not sure anybody wanted it to go where it has gone. Even consumers.
It's too low for you, is it?
It's too low for everybody. I think even consumers stand to suffer in the long term. These cycles are inevitable, yet one hopes that they would be moderate and will not impact long-term investment and the ability of the industry to deliver. I've said this before, we're in a commodity business. Crude oil is the ultimate commodity and it goes through cycles. High prices draw a lot of investment flows into the industry. Production capacity goes up, and then ultimately you have supply exceeding demand that puts a glut, and inventories go up and prices decline. Like I said, we hope that it's a moderate and short-lived, but the fact of the matter is supply and demand and the rules of economics will govern. It will take time for the current glut to be removed and for supply and demand to balance. Lower oil prices hopefully will incent higher demand, and at the same time investments will inevitably slow down into the industry. We hope moderately, because long-term our industry needs sustained investment to keep up with the ultimate rise in demand, with rising population, 9 billion people, economic prosperity in developing economies.
But Mr. AlFalih, if it's too low, you have the ability to raise the price again, simply by producing less.
Well, Saudi Arabia has a policy, and the policy is of course, set by the government through the Ministry of Petroleum, and they have said that Saudi Arabia will not single-handedly balance the market on a downturn. We invest hundreds of billions of dollars in our production capacity. A lot of that production capacity is spare capacity that has saved the global economy time and time again when there were either disruptions or spikes in demand. That policy will be maintained. We're ready to increase production above our nominal level. Nick, if you look at the last few years, our production has been steady while our domestic demand has been rising at a very healthy pace. The math will tell you that our exports have been gradually declining. So the reason for the imbalance in the market is absolutely has nothing to do with Saudi Arabia. In fact,
well, can I just check? You said it's too low. What price do you believe it should be then?
Well, I think it's been proven that $100 was a price that everybody thought was healthy, but at the same time, perhaps it was too healthy for capacity increases. I will not venture to guess what the price will be, but it
60,
will be
70, but you say too low.
It will be the price that ultimately balances supply and demand. And I don't think anybody, no single person can dictate what that price is. And I will be foolish if I did that here or anywhere else. I think we're going to just wait for the forces of supply and demand, the price that attracts enough investment to provide enough capacity to offset decline as well as meet increasing demand increase. And costs change with time, technologies change, resource availability for investment change with political changes around the world, and we've seen the impact of technology and resource availability in the US, which was not available 10 years ago. So it's a dynamic market. We are by far not only the largest, but the most competent organization in the world to be able to adjust to whatever the market dictates on us in terms of demand numbers and prices. And we remain in that pole position, ready to adjust to market dynamics.
But when we're talking about the future vision and your role in transforming the national economy, and you are a cash generator for the economy, you're the core cash generator. In Davos last week, I heard one calculation that this price is losing you $90 billion a year.
Well, I think that is probably set by a reference price that existed for a while, and you know, that is again a factor that may or may not exist again. What is a fair price? What is an appropriate benchmark price to calculate from what we're losing is very subjective. I think what matters to us is not the price or the revenue at any one point of time. It's over the cycle. It's across the cycle, the highs and the lows. We've been in this business, Nick, for 82 years, and we plan to be in it for a longer period of time. We have the resources, we have the capabilities, we have the long-term vision. So it's not what are we making in 2015, what are we making in this quarter, but how are we optimizing the wealth of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia below the ground by preserving and stewarding the natural resources of the kingdom, and above the ground when we turn these resources into economic value, not just cash. I mean, you're talking about the cash, and that is obviously something very important and we watch very carefully. But how do we create economic opportunities in the
Those who
kingdom?
want to invest in Saudi Arabia or do business in Saudi Arabia being concerned that suddenly the low price means that you are probably trading at a loss at the moment, and that therefore affects the ability to invest in the economy.
That's not true. Saudi Aramco, despite our high tax and royalty regime and by the way, we're treated like any other international oil company is treated anywhere else, is cash long, and we're able to fund our capital program. Our capital program will decline slightly in 2015 from where we thought it would be a few months ago. But it is still above what we spent in 2013, and we're doing it from self-generated funds. So I assure you, I assure the audience and anybody who's listening, that Saudi Aramco is in a strong position. Of course, it's well known that the government of Saudi Arabia, as you mentioned earlier, is going to continue to spend because the government enjoys very strong surpluses in deposits as well as borrowing capacity, which is unused. So both Saudi Arabia at a national level, we at a corporate level are committed to our long-term strategy. Not only are we investing, but we're even more committed today to diversifying and investing in new sectors that are relatively new to Saudi Aramco. And I think what's critical to the audience of investors is we're more committed than ever for attracting foreign direct investment into the sector as a whole, our supply chain, our contracting business, which is going to not only continue but thrive in the years to come, because Saudi Arabia is going to be the center of the oil business, the petrochemical business, the power generation business. All of these are sectors that Saudi Aramco will catalyze to make sure that we continue to have very robust investment environment, very robust demand from us and our partner companies that also have the same strategy as we do of localizing and working with investors here in the kingdom.
Now, I'm not getting any questions from the audience at the moment. Maybe you're convincing them at the moment. But what I thought I'd bring is a copy of The Economist from a few weeks ago, which shows sheikhs versus shale. Mr. AlFalih, I don't know that that is you on the left, but the new economics of oil, I don't know if the camera can pick that up. But the reason I'm showing that, again for clarity, is the impression is, and I have to take advantage, not least because the governor said I shouldn't be nice to you before we came on the platform, of asking you what you're trying to do to American shale at the moment. An extra 3 million barrels a day coming out of there. Are you trying to kill the American shale production and send many companies into bankruptcy to get rid of them as suppliers?
Well, I am on the record, and I think more importantly than me, His Excellency, the Minister of Petroleum, is on the record. Saudi Arabia welcomes the advent of shale into the global scene. And I mean that, I know he means that. Because we look, and
but U.S. shale particularly?
U.S. shale is needed and is welcome on the global scene. And the reason is we're, again, thinking in terms of decades and generation. The globe, the world, the rising population are going to need oil and gas for, we're not thinking in terms of 2014, 2015, 2016. We need more resources because the transition from a hydrocarbon-driven global economy to a non-hydrocarbon-driven economy is going to take generations. There is no solution, technological, economic, at this point of time.
But do you fear that renewables are moving faster, the development there is moving faster, which could therefore affect the 93 million barrels a day and therefore reduce demand considerably and ultimately affect Saudi Arabia?
No, I don't fear that. In fact, we're big believers and investors in renewables, particularly solar. Saudi Aramco has invested more in solar than anybody else in the kingdom, and we have not just projects, but we have research, and we have organizations that do this on a full-time basis, and we believe within the utility sector that solar is a very attractive choice for Saudi Arabia and for many other regions where it is economic. I think in transport and in petrochemicals, oil and gas are going to be dominant for a long, long, long time. And we need resources to keep it coming at a moderate price, and that has been proven. The shale has served us. Saudi Aramco has invested already $3 billion in developing our unconventional gas, and we just earmarked an additional $7 billion. This is the first time I shared this publicly. So we have, within a very few years, $10 billion of investment to develop our own shale. Saudi Arabia will be the next frontier after the US, where shale and unconventional will make a significant contribution to our energy mix, especially gas. We wouldn't be able to do this without the success in the US, and we thank people in the industry in the US who, innovated and brought this business model to success, and we're going to create our own fit-for-purpose unconventional business. However, I think supply and demand, the same situation will happen. If the 3 million barrel you're talking about had come from Brazil or from the Caspian, the Caspian was supposed to bring 20 million barrels at some point of time. And of course, it didn't pan out to be true. Brazil was going to disrupt the oil market, and it hasn't come to light. So the fact of the matter, it's not a matter of us targeting shale per se. It is the laws of supply and demand being, violated. You have oversupply. That has to correct.
But you can adjust the supply. What about your reflection? In many ways, emerging economies around the world are benefiting enormously. Mr. Modi in India is removing subsidies. It's produced an enormous fillip for the Indian economy at a critical time in the beginning of his government. But you're seeing in places like Nigeria, in Venezuela, in Iran, and obviously in Russia, real concern about the stability of many of the countries now. How much are you concerned that even if there are advantages to many countries, what is happening here is actually creating instability in critical areas of the globe? Do you think about that as president?
Well, I definitely agree that there is a wind that will be blowing behind the sails of developing countries, big importing countries, and that's a good thing. I think one of the surprises in 2014 was the slowdown in developing economies, the BRICS and others. So lower oil prices is a big tax relief, so to speak, or call it quantitative easing. It's a big stimulus package that was not intended, but it has its effect, and it will hopefully prevent many of these economies from excessively slowing down, and that will rebalance growth. As we see the US growing, we will see developing Asia and elsewhere catching up, and we get into a global balanced economy. Now, in terms of political risks within within producing countries and instability, it's been with us, unfortunately. We don't want it to be, but it's been with us without the lower oil prices. And I agree that all things being equal, lower oil prices will create additional risk that many of these countries have to manage. But that's part of being a producing country. Producing countries should manage their economies well. They should create reserves and cushion to be able to go through the downturns that we're going through. It is part of the business and the landscape we're in. And any country that is enjoying the windfall of higher oil prices when they're coming should keep reserves to deal with the downturn. We're fortunate and that in Saudi Arabia we have the wise leadership that have done this, and I think other countries will need to learn the lesson and do the same.
All right, I have to tell you that I think my broadband has got, or my Wi-Fi has gone down for the moment, but let me move on with other questions about Saudi Arabia. I may come back when I've reconnected here, but particularly about your accelerated transformation program and the role that you have now in the Saudi economy, particularly when it comes to education, particularly when it comes to training and the skill challenge, and where you see this now moving inside Saudi Arabia.
Well, maybe just a word about the Accelerated Transformation Program for those who don't know it. Saudi Aramco, as all of you know, is by far the leading oil and gas company, primarily upstream. And a few years ago, we assessed ourselves and we saw our dominant position in oil and gas exploration and production, financial position, competency, technology within the upstream. And we had the choice of being content with that. We certainly had no burning platform, which typically pushes companies into transformation. But according to our own team, which, by the way, His Excellency the Governor was a member of at that time before he jumped ship and went to Sagia, we saw a burning opportunity. And we saw this great opportunity for Saudi Aramco to be more, to do more, to contribute more, not only here in the kingdom, but globally. So we decided to diversify, to build a globally leading chemical business, to be the world's undisputed largest refiner, marketer, and distributor of refined product, to be a major power generator through integration of power into our manufacturing plants, but significantly to also build our capabilities. And that gets into your question, Nick. Capabilities is the competitive advantage that outlasts everything else. And for us, it was talent and technology. So in technology, we're multiplying our spending, which was significant to start with, on technology development by a factor of 5. We're tripling the number of researchers. We're sending hundreds of our people to advanced degrees and internships into globally leading research institutions and universities. And they're coming back to lead our research centers here in the kingdom. We're opening 8 research facilities around the world, from China all the way to the US, through Europe and elsewhere. And we're creating basically a network of company-run as well as collaborations in technology. Talent is key. Saudi Aramco has a legacy of attracting the best, developing them, and building the human...
What about attracting talent back to Saudi?
Well, we really have adopted all along a model of developing our own talent from Saudi Arabia. So we hire from high school thousands and thousands of people every year. Over our record, we have 80,000 people that we have developed in multi-year vocational program, 30,000 people that we have sent to universities, not just undergraduate, but many of them into graduate program. Today, as we speak, we have 2,000 people in universities. The record of them coming back is close to 100%. I don't know the exact statistics, but they all come back because by the time they leave, they are part of the family. They are part of the culture and the fabric of Saudi Aramco. Our retention rate is incredibly high. We attract global talent. We don't have many Saudis who are migrating like other countries. Saudis by nature gravitate back home. But we also have over 10,000 expatriates who do not only technology positions, but some of them are in leadership positions, and we're proud of the diversity that we have. Men and women from Saudi Arabia, from around the world, working together as a team, and not only delivering energy, but I think increasingly delivering innovation, delivering technology, delivering ideas that have never been applied anywhere else, and turning heads around the industry. That is only going to multiply in the future as the ATP multiplies our investment in people and technology. And also I would add, we're not the only one doing it. We're part of a movement in Saudi Arabia. KAUST, I think, is the spearhead of this transformation into high-end knowledge creation within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
We've been talking about knowledge creation yesterday, and also knowledge transfer and adding new capacity, particularly through education. But there is one problem, the decline in maths and science students. And that's what you need, that's what engineering needs, that's what the kind of small incubated companies and ideas will need to develop something new for Saudi Arabia. How do you tackle that problem?
Well, we partner with the Ministry of Education, for K-12, and we have been part of the Tatweer.
But do you accept the problem? Do you accept the problem?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We have many problems, by the way. If anybody has been on the stage saying we don't have problems, they don't belong on the stage. We have problems. And one of them is the quality of STEM education within the kingdom. So we acknowledge it. The Ministry of Education acknowledges. We see the results, the benchmarking, and we're working on it. So we partnered with them, but we created a parallel program which has been blessed and adopted by the Ministry of Education. Prince Khalid recently made an exception that this is the only external program to the ministry that they will fully support. It's called ITHRA Youth. It targets reaching 2 million youngsters by 2020, an intensive, interactive, experiential STEM education. We've already gone out to every corner of Saudi Arabia, and we've reached, in the first couple of years, about 100,000 kids. Their scores improved by 20% in basic math and science. This is well documented. More importantly, their excitement about science and technology. These kids no longer want to go into humanities or study geography, or they don't aspire to be government employees or teachers, which has been, I think, the average aspiration of many. Some of the government employees are not happy here, but I'm sorry. But that, so I think we're creating ambassadors for math and science. We're teaching the teachers. Like I said, we have vans that go from school to school and deliver this. Each kid gets 100 intensive hours through the program. So this is a grassroots program. We're using the internet to reach. We have mathletics and other programs that kids can study at home. And we've got partnerships that we're creating with communication companies that will also help us reach more.
I'm back online, and there are several questions. So we've got 9 minutes left. If we can just move through these pretty quickly. A couple of questions about SMEs. This from Faisal Al-Ferdos. My question is if Aramco has a support plan for SMEs, especially when it comes to the simple and basic industrial services and needs of Saudi Aramco. And there's another question in a similar vein to that about SMEs.
Yes, we created a few years ago. In fact, this was one of the projects that Abdul Latif Al-Othman led when he was still an officer of the company. It's called the Aramco Entrepreneurship Center. Its nickname is WAAD. It has a fund of $200 million to invest equity, plus it has the capacity to give loans, but more importantly, it develops basic skills amongst entrepreneurs. We've already trained thousands and thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs into development business plans and how to manage a company. We take the few ideas that make sense and support them financially. Our focus is not microfinance, but larger startups and differentiated startups. So if somebody wants to open a supermarket, we will not be in it. But if somebody brings an innovative idea, something that is a new business model to the kingdom or a new technology or something differentiated and unique that will add value, we jump on it and we support them, and there have been many successes that are just too many to mention here.
We'll come back to oil in a moment, but there's one question here from Jean Deschamps. I would be interested to know the role of Saudi Aramco now in developing PV solar and renewables in the kingdom.
Well, we're an investor in a company in Japan, a small investor called Solar Frontier, and they have thin film technology. We're talking to them. Possibly they have a Saudi investor partner that will build their largest factory yet. We're talking to another company in Europe and trying to attract them to come and build another factory. So even before the kingdom announces its targets and the size of the investment, we know it's going to be significant, very, very significant. But we want the PV cells that are installed in Saudi Arabia to be made in Saudi Arabia, to be assembled in Saudi Arabia, the raw material to come out of Saudi Arabia, and ultimately to be maintained in Saudi Arabia. One of the technologies that we have developed in-house is robots that do the cleaning. Many people are worried about dust and the environmental conditions here preventing solar cells from operating at efficiency. So we're even working in-house on developing technical solutions. We have a solar farm in Dhahran, and we're supporting the solar farm at Kaust as well that tests different technologies and see how they behave in the east and the west. So we're quite active.
Despite your core business being oil, I mean, do you think that very substantially there needs to be a massive push in the kingdom for renewables and for sustainable energy, for PV particularly?
It is really an imperative for the kingdom. I can't overemphasize the concern that I have with the rising consumption of our ultimately finite oil and gas. And we need to manage it. This is a huge benefit for us to have oil and gas at the level we have, and we need to use it prudently and judiciously to give a competitive advantage to the kingdom, to give prosperity for our citizens, and to allow them to enjoy affordable energy. But there is a lot of waste of it, and I think the appropriate introduction at the appropriate pace of non-oil and gas energy, especially renewables like wind and solar, is a must for us. The question is how.
Do you feel you should be pushing hard as a major corporation in the country?
I think we're part of a network of organizations within the kingdom led by the government, and there are government agencies like KCARE that are responsible for this. We're supporting them from behind. We're partners in this. Ultimately, we will have a lot to lose. If the rate of increase of consumption of oil and gas continue at 6 to 7%, Saudi Aramco will be a big loser at the end of the day.
Right. Questions have gone back to the price of oil, so let me put this to you. First of all, Shabazz, what is your break-even price, and are you already under your capacity, or do you still have capacity to produce more? What is the break-even price you'd like? 60 to 70? 48?
Well, the cost for Saudi Aramco, the cost, all-in cost, is in the single digits, in the low single digits. So I want to assure all of the Saudi audience that our cost is low, and that's why we're
$2 a barrel.
I'm not going to give you a number, but it's like, you know, the low single digits.
But
Guess.
What would you say? What would you say to 2 or 3? Remember, I've not got to be nice to you. So, is it $2 or $3 a barrel?
Well, you know, it's within that
range.
Within that range, plus or
Between
minus
2 and
100,
3.
plus or minus 100%. So.
I hope you're making up your mind here. Fine. So
no, it's very low. I think my point is whether the price is 40 or 100. We're not only covering our costs, we're recovering the capital we've invested. But Saudi Aramco is going to be investing $30 to $50 billion a year in and year out, for decades to come, to maintain oil production, to double our gas production, to build refining capacity, to build marketing and distribution, to build petrochemical plants, to allow the diversification that we all aspire for. To do that, we need a price that is very, very healthy. So it's not a matter of recovering what we've spent. It's a matter of fueling an investment plan that is very and at the same time, we also are 100% owned by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, by the people of Saudi Arabia. They have their expectations. The economy is largely dependent on oil.
And the issue of capacity to produce more, because many of the major oil giants are obviously significantly pulling back on their capital expenditure and their investment plans now. Are you doing the same? Are you pulling back on your investment plans in the new fields or new marginal areas of fields?
We don't have marginal fields in Saudi Arabia.
I said marginal areas of fields.
We in the upstream, we're really not adjusting a lot. We've already at the maximum capacity that we aspire to be. Last year, we brought the Manifa field, 900,000 barrels per day. That is equivalent to some of the top 5 major IOCs' total production. So we're in a good position, but we have to invest a lot in gas. And I talked about unconventional. There is a lot of conventional. Our investment will have to adjust to the realities of today. We will push some projects into the future. We will stretch some of them. We will renegotiate some contracts. We will reduce our OPEX. The lower price environment is an opportunity for the industry as a whole, Nick, to sharpen our pencils. I think we got spoiled with $100 oil, and we were focused on building capacity, and we lost focus on fiscal discipline and watching, that last penny and making sure we get value for it. So we're doing that. That is the big time, being spent on it within Saudi Aramco, and I am sure every other company. It's also an opportunity for the kingdom to do the same. The kingdom, as committed as we are to continuing to invest and build the infrastructure and invest the economy, we can be a little bit more disciplined in our spending. So I think it's an opportunity for all of the stakeholders here, government, big companies like Aramco and SABIC and the private sector, to improve our fiscal discipline.
Right, one last question here, just coming from Saud. How to respond to the fact that OPEC announced yesterday that oil prices will rise to $200 a barrel? How does that make economic sense? What are the implications? And for those who don't know, OPEC, of course, its main aim is, quote, stabilization of oil prices in international oil markets. So we may go from $48 to $200 a barrel.
Well, I doubt that we will be approaching those kind of levels unless the industry completely stops investing. And then we have a severe shortage. I mentioned that Saudi Aramco has a spare capacity. So that will serve to cushion any spike into the future. We cannot completely prevent it. We're only 10% of the market or so, currently at 9.8. Our capacity is 12. So we need to assume, and that is what I hear from my colleagues in the industry, that everybody sees the long-term recovery and everybody is maintaining some level of investment. If investment halts completely, then that scenario
is OPEC still relevant, given what you have decided to do here, which is essentially to push the price down, which is not in the interest of many members of OPEC?
I think collaboration between suppliers and consumers is absolutely necessary. And the cycles we've gone through at high oil prices and what we're going through at low oil prices is going to make the case for dialogue and cooperation between suppliers and producers even more clear to everybody else. So stereotyping, cartels and this and that, I think is going to disappear because people see the value of stability. And after the cycle comes, settles down and the market restabilizes, I think a regime of more closer cooperation between producers and consumers will emerge, and I'm sure OPEC and the IEA and will all have a role to play. And by the way, within the kingdom, we have also a forum that is dedicated to this, that was launched by the late King Abdullah, bless his soul, that attempted and continues to play a key role in bringing dialogue between producers and consumers.
Mr. AlFalih, thank you very much indeed. And let me just summarize that you said the prices are too low at the moment, but this will not affect the contribution of Saudi Aramco to the economy, that there are fluctuations in the market, fluctuations in the cycles, and this is just one of those fluctuations at the moment. but you will have a critical role still in financing the economy and the transformation in the economy, which was the title of this session. Thank you for all your questions. Mr. AlFalih, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nick.